Welcome to the Advancement Podcast. Our mission is to reach the lost in America by advancing leaders and churches so that communities are transformed. Join us as we discuss how to stay healthy as leaders, work in teams, and lead change. Come on, let's advance together.
Welcome back to another episode of the Advancement Podcast. I am so excited that you were with us today.
Quarantine edition.
Yeah, quarantine edition. Hey, if you like what you hear, if you could share it, rate us on where you listen to your podcast, follow us on YouTube, Facebook. Tim's now on Instagram at TimDWare.
There was pressure applied. There was pressure applied to get me on Instagram.
So help us out. Help us spread the word. It helps us continue to do what we're doing here at the Advancement Podcast. I am your host, Todd Barm, joined, as always, by my trusty sidekick, Timothy D. Ware. Hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm the sidekick.
I got the sidekick again, huh?
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Well, you're giving me a hard time about only watching videos when I get off of work. So,
well,
I took my kids. Yeah, I took my kids on a 2.5 mile walk yesterday after I got off work in the cold, walking uphill both ways. So
barefoot.
I wear shoes because I'm smart, but
Yeah. Well, it's cold outside. That's all right. But anyway,
it'll probably 100 degrees when this comes out.
Maybe so, because it'll be another week before it hits the airways, and it'll be warm by the end, buddy.
Yeah, we hope.
We hope so. Anyway, well, it's good to have our panel back with us. This is part 2 of our series on looking to what the harvest, trying to see what the harvest is going to look like on the backside of this COVID situation. It's good to have everybody back with us. We have with us Stacie Sylvas. Almost said Dowler again. Stacie Sylvas. She's a licensed professional counselor and the founder and executive director of Thrive Counseling Services, which is a nonprofit organization providing low-cost, faith-based mental health services to the Dallas community. She's married for 8 years, and they have a junior high student and 2 preschoolers. Woo!
Woo!
Woo, that's right. How's East Dallas?
East Dallas is beautiful as always. The best part of Dallas.
I didn't know there was a beautiful part of Dallas, but I live in the country, so
Now, that's not fair.
You just got to get out of the city, away from the city.
I do have kind of a prejudice toward tall buildings and to consider anything that's just anyway.
He has to wear his aluminum hat around him. He's afraid, all the airwaves.
Okay. We also have with us Dr. Nicole McAninch, who's all right. This is like the longest title.
You don't have to say it then. Like, really. I'm just a person. I'm here. I might have something to say.
Clinical Associate Professor and Division Leader of Child and Family Studies Program in the Family and Consumer Sciences Department at Baylor University.
Does that fit on a business card?
Yeah.
Or on a placard? Because Baylor came up with that. You didn't.
She gives out the brochures.
Business cards. It can't. The regular business card size can't hold that.
That's right. We're so glad to have Dr. Mack with us from Baylor, from Waco today. She and her husband Chad are pastors at Connect Church in Waco, and they have 3 children that are elementary school and preschool. And full disclosure, she also sits on the advancement board. I'm really getting curious to wonder. We have a board meeting next Monday to hear what she's going to tell everybody about being on here.
I guess you'll have to wait and find out.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to wait.
She's in the hometown of Fixer Upper.
That's right. Magnolia Country.
Magnolia. I'm not going to say what came to mind.
Good job. Save it for the board meeting.
That's right. Then we have with us Dr. Ben Blackwell. Ben is a director at Houston Baptist University's Theological Seminary. He is where he teaches New Testament and theology also. He began his career as an actuarial, that is quite the word, actuarial consultant with Willis Towers Watson, providing services for Fortune 500 companies, really watched the markets and helped with retirement and savings. That was really your area, if I remember right. That was your area of primary focus for them, wasn't it?
Yep, that's right. In fact, if you don't know what an actuary was, and I don't blame you because I didn't know what one was when I got hired, it's people that project out what happens in the future. So like the sense of actuaries work for health insurance companies as well as pension plans and things like that. They figure out when you're going to get sick or when you're going to die and all those kind of things like that.
So you took your accounting and math degree and your accounting degree and applied it to predicting when people were going to need their money or they were going to be passing it on to the next person.
Yeah, the work I did was on the corporate side. So as cities, states, then large companies would provide pension plans for their employees, but then also retiree medical plans. And so that was one of the major things I worked in, was in the medical side.
Well, looky here. You're right on track with this conversation today, which brings us to Dr. Chris Hernandez, who's a board-certified emergency physician in the Woodlands, who graduated from the University of North Carolina, and he's on staff at CHI St. Luke's in the Woodlands and is the stroke director for the emergency department there. And also my brother-in-law. Great to have you, Chris.
Hey, Tim. Glad to be here. How's it going? Good to see you guys. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't asked you. You've got a senior in high school and a sophomore in high school. How's homeschooling going in your world?
They love it. They think it's a protracted snow day, so to speak. And so, the day starts at 10 o'clock a.m. where they've had their, 11 hours of sleep. And then they casually get up in their pajamas and get started on school. So they think it's the greatest thing in the world. They think it's fantastic.
We want to talk today about, we're talking in these conversations about what the future holds for the harvest and for reaching people for Jesus. And one of the things that I've wondered since you bring that up, my kids, my daughter's at home right now, but she's a teacher. So she's actually a teacher. She works in the Far East in Northern Asia. So she's teaching classes from my house, and everybody's being homeschooled. Ben, you've got a high schooler at home.
That's right.
And I've got one college student doing college at home, just like my son. I've wondered how much do you guys think this will impact the educational system going forward? Two of you are actually professors, and everybody here is parents of school-age kids. So what do you guys think the long-term effect of this virtual education will be on our students? Go.
Well, I'll jump in from the economic side. I think one of the things that, there's been a move across the U.S. to give raises to teachers, right, to invest money in the public school system. And that is echoing a broader decline that has happened across the education system. So we see public university costs going up by huge percentages because states are providing less funding. And they were doing the similar kind of pullback on the public education, K-12 side. And so there's been a redress of that partially across the United States. But then as state budgets are going to be tapped for unemployment, or like in Texas, just not going to have the oil income that we've had in the past, it's I think going to be a challenge then for the nature of the funding that goes into how can they sustain those levels at the way they have. And so it's going to hit both the K-12 as well as the higher education, I think, in different ways.
So you're saying that there will be less funds going to schools for teachers and for different resources at both the secondary education and as well as in regular grade school. So do you think that may push people to move towards a more technology driven because it reduces cost?
Yeah, it could. I mean, you could have some more of kind of the Khan Academy or Khan Academy, sorry, stuff where you have some build up things around that. Let's see, it says that I'm muted here, so sorry.
No, you're good.
But so that's, so there's some of those things, but of course those drive up cost as well too, as you invest more in technology. The cohort that we're working with here, it's very normal to call a Zoom meeting, have a computer, all that kind of stuff. There's something like 10 to 20% of families that don't have, high-speed internet at home, computers and things like that. And so there's a two speed, I guess, version of this that just moving that direction won't be the easy solution either, though.
I guess I didn't know the stat of those that don't have it. What do you think, Nicole, from your perspective?
I mean, we've had a lot of, so I can certainly speak at the higher ed level. Historically, the institution that I'm at has really valued face-to-face instruction over any kind of online or hybrid-based instruction, and I think this situation has really started to shift some of those expectations of what that looks like and where we're going to be moving in the future of offering more of those and so I mean I certainly see it impacting, and of course as Ben was mentioning, it's just but then I think what it does is it has done this amazing thing of increasing awareness of the value of educators and just the amazing job that they're doing right now. I mean, I want to give a shout out, particularly my children's educators, of how resourceful and how resilient and all of those things that they have been in this season, and it's amazing. And I think we see just this uptick in the value of that process and of educators. But I do think, as Ben was mentioning, just this economic reality though of we want to be able to value them with additional resources, but are we going to be able to in the upcoming season? I think that really, and particularly at the higher ed level, there's very much a concern of, will students be able to come back in the fall if their parents are losing jobs and they're unable to secure aid for education? So definitely in the short term, there's the concern of whether or not we'll have the economic foundation to be able to support some of the value of education that we're seeing really displayed right now.
Well, do you think that's going to impact, do you guys think that will impact the extracurricular things? Will schools and people, will they begin to do what churches are doing, streamline and cut back and minimize so that they can focus on their core entities, their core things? I mean, Chris, your son's deeply involved in band. I mean, do you think that those are, or will they just charge parents more for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think there's maybe two aspects to that. So first, I'll just give a couple of anecdotes while we're talking about school and kids. So as we're doing this Zoom meeting, my son is in the kitchen also doing his math homework with 3 other students. They're all together on one platform and they're all doing stuff together. So I asked him, I said, well, who's the smart one here? We need to make sure that you're getting good, colleagues and good information in there. So on one end, I see the creativity part of this. They're being creative, they're calling their buddies, and together they're doing their algebra homework. So that's kind of a positive aspect of it. I thought, well, okay, that's pretty good. One of the things that does concern me, and I guess educators are doing the best they can. They have their hands tied with just this entire situation. The grading is a little different. So they're not grading them quite as hard as they have before in times past, or as rigorous. So on some ends that might help some students, and on other ends it might reduce accountability to some degree. So that part kind of gets my attention a little bit there. But again, our educators are doing a great job of just trying to do the best that they can. The other aspect, though, of it, you had mentioned band. And yes, my son is in band, and he's not just in band. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever had kids in band just yet, but it's an entirely different universe. And so I came.
Chris was a sports dad. He didn't
Right.
expect to be a bandit dad.
Is this band you speak of? I don't know.
If this had all been about basketball or football, it'd been different, but it's band.
Absolutely, yeah. But the two universes are very much the same: the universe of sports and the universe of band. And they are highly driven, right? These are highly driven machines that are an industry of themselves. And for my son, he's a percussionist. He does drumline, and his stuff starts early. So he has a week in June, typically, where they do some tryouts and such. Then they start up in July, practicing 2-a-days, something in the morning and then something in the evening, just to prepare themselves for the marching season that starts in the fall when school starts. So the question you ask is, are they going to be able to go back to that? Is that going to be life as normal or what? And we have been asking the band directors back and forth periodically, what do you think? And they really have no idea. They're throwing their arms up in the air and they say, we have no idea what the new world is going to look like. If you asked my opinion, I think those machines are just so large, the sporting world especially. That's kind of a hard machine to just automatically stop. You can't take football away from me. I mean, please.
Well, I think the things
take
that
anything away, but don't take away my football, please.
I think the things that are probably more likely to take a hit are, when economic challenges hit the educational world in the 70s and 80s, the thing that took a hit was vocational classes. At the high school level, you lost shops and you lost home economics, you lost those kinds of things. And you wonder if there's an economic challenge that comes out of this. What are the programs that are likely to take a hit next? Where will those reductions be? And thinking about it from a strictly economic perspective, since you guys really brought that up, and teachers, I think parents right now are valuing teachers more than they ever did because,
amen to that. You can have them back.
I think especially those that have younger children, because with the high schoolers, you can kind of just, are you doing your work? But with the younger children, elementary school children, do you think
I didn't know how to use a Chromebook till just now.
Do we expect that maybe parents will bond issues? Will we be more likely to see a push for educators to be paid more by parents?
Well, since my wife's a teacher, I hope the answer is yes. But I will say, to the band issue, so my son's in band. He's French horn, mellophone player, and so marching and symphony band and all that is very important. But it strikes me, my wife teaches for a charter school system here in Houston. I guess it's around the state of Texas, and I've noticed that charter schools don't have as many of those extracurricular activities. And so the growth rate in charter schools are pretty large, at least here in Texas. And so the Google tells me that somewhere around 8 to 10% of the students are in charter schools now. And so that the dynamics of funding for that, because they're not going to have the big football field to practice in and do things, or like my wife's school has a gym, and so they have some of those sports, but not other sports. They don't have band, and they do other things that invest in like STEM things. And so the nature and the allocation of those funds will be different, I think, depending on the setting. So where I went to high school in rural East Texas, right, is going to be a very different interest, as far as football and all that stuff goes, versus an urban or suburban school system and what their values are.
Well, I just think when one of the things that I've thought about, at least at least in the short term, all of the weekend sports, the extracurricular, youth sports leagues that are just out there when you're not involved in school sports, those aren't going to just come back like that. And if this delays, I heard this morning somebody was even predicting that we may not be having large group gatherings until the fall. If they can't get together for rehearsals or for football practices, if they can't get together, if school systems and governments hold this for another 2 months versus just a few weeks, the impact on our society, the extracurricular things that people did it seems to me there's going to be a reduction in extracurricular for the short term when they do open things back up. That's just kind of been my gut feeling. And I wonder what impact that will have on people. Will that drive more people to the church, or is this an opportunity for the church to step in and provide those social gathering pieces that may be missing, increase that where they've been filling it with something else?
Tim, I'll jump in on that.
Yeah.
Come on.
I was going to say, I think here in Dallas, there's been a big push to get technology to those who didn't otherwise have it in their hands. For students who didn't have those kind of things at home already, tablets and Chromebooks and whatnot. They have been handing them out. And as they're doing that, the focus has really narrowed, right, on just education. And I think beyond that, just the services that people need most. And so the prominence of sports, of extracurriculars, of those kind of things, I think has definitely taken a decrease for the time being, but I expect that to last longer. Maybe that's not going to be a complete long term, but I think definitely in the short term, in the next few months to even the next year, we're going to see a decrease in the prominence of sports and just the roles that those kind of extracurriculars are playing in family life. And I think that absolutely creates an opportunity for the church. People are going to have practical needs. And I say that kind of thinking of filling that void where kids may have been going out to do a little league game. They may have been going out to participate in an after school program or something at their community center, and finding that maybe those things are shut down temporarily or even for a more extended period of time, but saying, here's a place where the church can jump in to meet some practical needs for the neighbors who are right there close to them. And that gives you a door to then meet spiritual needs as well. But I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for the church to jump in and say, there are lots of practical needs right now that I can use as a bridge to then maybe meeting some more spiritual needs for our friends and neighbors.
I'd be interested to hear from the rest of you guys. Do you think that from an educational perspective, that there will be a short-term reduction in extracurriculars, that once things get moving, it'll come back? And the reason I say that, because that is, I think, for church and pastors and student pastors and children's pastors to understand that there may be this extended window where the things they complain about may not be there, that this isn't about replacing them, but it is an opportunity to connect people to Jesus because they're looking for something. Do you expect that do the rest of you expect that there will be kind of at least a short-term reduction in extracurriculars?
I was gonna, and I would agree with Stacie in the sense that I do think, there's a phrase going around right now on social media that says something to the effect of, before you hurry back to all the things, you want to be back to, make sure they're things that are worth you getting back to. And I do think I think on the one hand, there's probably going to be less offerings of extracurriculars, but I do think it's a time also where families may or may not have, or educational systems may or may not have the funds to be able to offer them, extracurriculars. And so I do think it's a golden opportunity for us to really think about how we are kind of bridging the gap between that. But I also think in terms of, okay, what does the church provide? And I would agree, practical needs are, and I would say that's a place where the church should start. Is just also in churches helping families decide what are the things we're now going to, now that everything's been essentially taken, everything's been moved off our plates that were so important on our plates. How do we even begin the conversation of what should go back there? And I think those are some hard conversations that I think we could be, as the church, as the body of Christ, very instrumental in just helping people. Not that there's one answer for everybody. I think for every family, the answer to that is going to be a little bit unique. But I do think it's an opportunity for us to, by offering these practical resources, then also come alongside families and just provide them the space so they can think through what are the things we should invite back into our lives. And maybe, some of these things are the things that should be brought back in. But I think families are going to have a window of time where they get to make some of those choices without feeling like society and culture is creating those choices for them. I think so many times families have taken on some of these activities because it's just a thing you do, right? You automatically put your kids into extracurriculars. You automatically, sign up for all of these activities. And I think it could be a really interesting time for families just to really, really stop and think, what are the things we want to have as a part of our family experience?
Go ahead, Todd.
So as a pastor, kind of jumping off of what you're all saying, what are some things that I practically need to prepare for that y'all think that families are going to be looking for? I've heard some say that, maybe they're looking at, more technology-based help from having computers provided for kids to do learning, things like that. Do I need to provide extracurricular type things that kids are not getting after school? Or do you think that we just need to continue doing what we're doing and maybe they will now have time to do church when they've not made time in the past? What do y'all think?
It's a hard one. I guess I'll jump in. It's, in some ways the nostalgia, or you go back to the 80s, right, where you build the church gym so everybody will come. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Todd was too young. Stacie, they were too young. Nicole was too young.
Church gym all the time.
Yeah,
but it was built in the 80s for you that were from the 90s.
Yeah, in the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, our church put in a volleyball court, sand volleyball court, and it got used about 10 times, and then it set out back, and so
we did that too.
It's a hard thing to know, because my suspicion is that once people have been cooped up in the house so much, even of any of these soccer leagues or whatever else, that people are going to be happy for their kids to re-engage in those things and jump into them quite quickly. And will be as maybe not the exact same as it is now, but still a challenge for the church.
Well, I wonder the thought that as you guys have all talked around this, there was an initial comment you talked about, Ben, the economics of education, but the economic requirements for extracurricular components for the majority of our society, especially, I don't know how many, 170 million people had out of 350 million. I mean, that's a lot of people, 170 million people that have applied for Social Security across the U.S. right now. And when you think about those numbers and the economic impact that could have in the short term, at least, on these opportunities, it speaks to two things. Stacie said the practical needs of the church can meet. So there's a large portion of the harvest. Statistically, they tell us that we really only have about 18 to 20% of the people in America who probably are in church on a given week, and maybe 40% are actually born again. So at best, statistically, there's close to 200 million people that need Jesus in America. And if that 200 million have a little bit of an economic angst, and are going to spend a little less and may not have it because they don't have it to spend. You just look at the ripple effects of that. It's not just about what they eat, but it is also about what they do and how it affects their kids. So it just stirs my brain up a whole lot. That makes it,
Yeah.
But I think, in terms of what Ben was saying, which is true, and particularly if we're going to try to meet some of these practical needs, we don't need to be as the church, particularly building, new things right now necessarily just to do it, just because it may, it's how can we partner with communities, community agencies and things like that who already, the local school, if the gym is currently closed because, they can't operate that right now, is there a way we can partner, with that local field or that local school gym? Or is there a way that we can partner with some of the things already going on? Because we don't need to recreate the wheel, but if we can inject a sense of life and, and newness in some of the, structures that are already available in our communities, that may be our that may be the perfect opportunity to do these things, but not feel like we need to build those or create those, or, we don't have to, reinvent the wheel in order to actually do some really cool things at the community-based level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, to add to what Todd was asking, he said, what can we do as a church to try to help our communities at this time? And also what Nicole was talking about, our local church has a food bank that we work at that is just right outside of there. And we really haven't touched too much on the economics of what COVID has done to America, or what will happen in the future. And maybe we could talk about that a little bit more here as we go forth. But I think people are going to be looking for simple things. And I know at our food bank, we've seen an increase of 250% as to the number of people that are coming our way. And so fortunately, we had that mechanism already in place. We started implementing some social distancing with it, where we prepare in advance the food that's going to be distributed, and people just come by in their cars. So we're meeting a practical need with food, but then also we ask them if they have needs spiritually and how we can pray for them. And so there's a door, an opportunity where we can minister to those who probably normally wouldn't come to a church, but now can go through a drive-through food bank, for example. Yeah. And as things do start opening up, but perhaps maybe the local flag football league is not available to your kid, perhaps the church is going to be able to provide an opportunity there with whatever social event that we decide is appropriate at that time, to be able to say, I know you can't put your kid flag football, but maybe, come to our, whatever appropriate festival that we can do at that time.
Yeah.
And just be able to, don't spend money that you don't have, come and allow us to meet that need for your kid, and then also to be able to meet your spiritual needs.
Yeah. All right, Todd, this has been, I don't know how many notes you took, but my mind has been racing as I was listening to everybody's comments. So what's your takeaway from this?
My takeaway is I have a lot to think about. That's my takeaway. It really just kind of challenged me that, there's some things that are going to be quite different when we come back. And people aren't just going to rebound as quickly as we think they are, financially, emotionally, spiritually, whatever we think. And, really, as we continue into the lead up into everybody coming back, it's so important for us to continue to be the church and to meet the needs and to be out there for people and do those things. So, really, my brain is just going, me, my brain's going 100 miles an hour of where we could do different things and be better with different ways. But, we've got a lot of work to do between now and whenever we're ready to get back to civilization.
Well, I appreciate what you said, because you said that you realize people are not going to rebound quite as quickly. Chris is right that people will hunker down and go back. They want to get back to norm, but normal's not going to be the same, number one. And I think part of the reason this conversation is so important because there are so many pastors that are saying, as soon as this is over, we can get back to normal.
Yeah.
But the reality is normal's going to be different. And if we just race back to normal too fast, then what we'll do is we'll miss the opportunity for all those people who need Jesus that are going to be so ripe and ready. And my biggest fear is losing.
I like what
that
Nicole
harvest.
said. I like what Nicole said is we need to continue what we're doing, because what we're doing right now is working, and that is what's going to ease people back into where we're headed, is the online stuff and the engagement type pieces that many of the churches are already doing. Those are the things that are going to ease them back in and make them feel more comfortable to transition back into normal life.
Yeah.
That was what I was challenged with.
Well, thanks, guys. So good to have Chris and Stacie and Nicole and Ben with us. Going to be back for one more episode. And I guess we'll see everybody the next time on the Advancement
Podcast.
Quarantine Edition.
See you next time, guys.
If you would like to keep this content coming, all Tim and Todd ask is $1 per show. See how to give, maybe even sponsor an episode or series on the website advancement.cc. Until next week, continue to advance the mission of Jesus.